Hi guys, and welcome back to A Dinosaur in the Library. I'm Dawn, and thank you so much for coming back to listen to me ramble about books again. And tonight, I've got a book tag. So this book tag was created by Jen Campbell, and I will link her channel and the video where she makes the tag down below. And it's the Be a Better Human tag. I think I got the name right. And the reason that she did this is because she was having a particularly awful week. And not just a generally awful week. Jen has a medical condition, and she explained it much better than I ever could in a video on her channel, so I will link that one down below as well, and you can go check it out and listen to her explain everything about it. But the point is, the disorder or the medical condition that she has means that she had to have a lot of surgeries on her hands as a child, as a young adult. So her hands are noticeably different. And for some reason, people out in public think it's okay to make extremely rude comments to her about them. Who are these people? Who are these people? I seriously want to know, because it's frightening that I'm walking around next to people like this. In any case, she was having a particularly bad week, full of people making these sorts of comments to her, and she felt that she needed to perhaps come up with a list of books that people could read to make themselves better humans, because clearly there is at least one group of people out there who are terrible at being a human being and living in a society. And so I decided to do the tag as well, and these are, of course, most of these are different from the ones that she had listed, and this is by no means a comprehensive list. There are many, many, many others I probably could have thought of if I sat down for about a week and thought about it. But we already know that my videos are extremely long anyway, and I've got a big old stack sitting here. So I figured what came off the top of my head is probably best. But I do not have copies of all of these, so I'm going to try to remember to link at least the ones I don't have copies of in the box down below so that you guys can go to Goodreads and check them out. And anyway, so these are books, not necessarily that are, hey, listen, this is how you become a better human being books. But these are books that most of them are books that are about people in situations or who experience things that not everybody does, that you or someone you know isn't necessarily going through. But by reading about these people and the situations they're going through and the things that they have to deal with, it will make you understand your fellow humans better and understand that your life and your point of view are not the only ones out there. And quite honestly, I don't think anybody that's watching my channel, or probably anybody that's watching Jen Campbell's channel, has this problem. Because most people on BookTube are pretty much reading a lot, and they're gonna have had this sort of experience before. However, just in case you want more information about different kinds of people, different kinds of situations, or if you want a list of books that you could suggest to someone in your life, or that you know, that isn't the greatest human being in the world, here you go. And so anyway, without further ado, I will get on with this, because I do have a stack of books here. And not even all of them, this isn't even all of them, right? So the first book I'm going to mention is Prison Writings, My Life is My Sundance, by Leonard Peltier, United States Prisoner number 89637-132, edited by Harvey Arden. And Leonard Peltier, if you don't know, is a Native American who was arrested because he was believed to have murdered an FBI agent during the 70s when the American Indian movement was really getting going and was doing a lot to bring attention to the problems of Native Americans and the reservation and different things in the United States. And it is widely believed by not just people who know him, but by organizations such as the UN and Amnesty International, that he is a political prisoner. And that it's not actually something that happened. And so it has long been hoped for and pushed that he get pardoned, but it has not happened yet. So he is still in prison. And this is a collection of writings that he has done while in prison. So this is a really good book, and I got mine used at a Goodwill. You could probably find it pretty cheap online. This is a hardback, and I think I probably paid $4 for it. So your library may have it. I don't know. I don't know if it's an ebook, but It's definitely out there, and you should definitely read it. The next one I'm going to mention is probably no surprise to anybody who's read it. To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. All about racism and hating people that you don't really... That the only reason... Hating people just because of something like skin color. And Atticus Finch, I think, is an excellent example of how not to be a dick. So yeah, pick this up. And a lot of people have read To Kill a Mockingbird and know about To Kill a Mockingbird, so I won't go too far into that one. This next one, I absolutely love. It's kind of subtle, so if the person that you're trying to suggest these books to doesn't get subtlety, maybe this isn't the one for them, but that's Flawed Dogs by Berkeley Breathed. I think that's how you pronounce his last name. I've never known. I think I've mentioned this one before, but he's the one who created Opus, the penguin, in the comic strips. And this book is about dogs who have deformities and physical, like you can see in this one, he's got a soup ladle tied to his foot because he doesn't actually have the foot, so it's tied to his leg. And it's all about how you don't have to be perfect to be loved, and that every single person, every single creature deserves love and is worthy of being cared for and loved. This book, so good. It's excellent. It's like middle grade, I think, probably. And yeah, I think there are a ton of adults who need to read this book and understand its lessons. But yeah. The next one I wanted to suggest Oranges Are Not the Only Fruit by Jeanette Winterson. I love Jeanette Winterson. Nobody I know who's read her doesn't love her. But I don't have Oranges Are Not the Only Fruit anymore. The only one of hers I actually own right now is Why Be Happy When You Could Be Normal by Jeanette Winterson. This is a memoir. And this one is a nonfiction memoir, and Oranges Are Not the Only Fruit is essentially a fictionalized discussion of her life in many ways, but you definitely need to... She's a lesbian, and she was adopted and grew up in an extremely religious household, and of course did not have an easy time of coming out, and it's just an excellent, excellent book. So if you haven't read Oranges Are Not the Only Fruit, go out and get it. But this is also an excellent read. Okay, the next one is Animal Vegetable Miracle, A Year of Food Life by Barbara Kingsolver. And I don't put this up here to say that you should be a vegetarian or vegan, because I'm not. I'm just not. But I think that it is definitely important that humans understand the impact they have on the environment around them and on the world through their food consumption, through their food patterns and their food ways. So it's definitely good for that. It explains a lot. It tells you a lot of things that you may not know otherwise. And Barbara Kingsolver is just an excellent writer, so pick it up. I keep saying that about all of them, but seriously, pick them all up. The next one I'm going to suggest, John Steinbeck's The Grapes of Wrath. This is an oldie, but a goodie. It's a classic, and there are a lot of books out there that I could suggest for you to read about people living in poverty, things like that. But this is a classic, and it's just a really good demonstration. I mean, they don't have anywhere to go once their livelihood and once what they built falls apart, and then they become homeless, essentially. And this was just an extreme example because there were a lot of people at the same time, from the same place, going through the same things, and they were all rushing to the same part of the country, trying to get the same few jobs and land and things like this. So it's just a more vivid example, but definitely something you should read. Another one having to do with poverty. I don't have a copy of this, unfortunately. I don't know why I don't have a copy of this, because I love this book. It's one of my favorites. And that is Nickel and Dimed by Barbara Ehrenreich. And the subtitle of that one is on Not Getting By in America. And it's about people who work minimum wage jobs such as Walmart or fast food, and how these are not jobs that provide a living wage. And you can't live off of the money that you can't raise a family. You can't even live by yourself with it. And I think a lot of people are disconnected from that idea and assume that just because you're working full-time or even part-time, that you should have enough to take care of yourself and you don't need help or food stamps or anything like that. And that's just not true. So there's another book. Excellent, excellent explanations of these things. The next one I'm going to mention is one I have already mentioned several times. That is The 100th Monkey by Ken Keyes Jr. And I'm just going to put the link below, which I have put in another video. That is a direct link to a PDF of this that is readable online. It is not pirated. This book has a specific, in the front it specifically says this book is not copyrighted because the author wanted this to be spread as far as possible. It's about nuclear weapons, but it's so transferable to so many things, and it's free. You can get it online. If you're watching this, you have access to the internet, even intermittently, and you can download it completely free and legal from multiple locations. And I want to give this book to everybody in the world, but of course I don't have the way of, or maybe not everybody in the world. Maybe I just need to send a copy of this to all the departments of defense in all the countries. Yeah, maybe. But anyway, read this. It's free. Go read it. The next book, Revolution by Russell Brand, another book I have mentioned multiple times. I think this is just a great book. He talks a lot about things that are going on in the world, a lot of things that are really screwed up that we need to fix, and he does it in a fairly eloquent and humorous way in many places. So, yeah. The next book I'm going to mention, I have not read yet. I'm taking it on extremely good reviews from every single person I know that has read it. That's Wonder. And all I know about this book is that the young boy who is the main character has a facial deformity, and I don't think I ever really know what the facial deformity is, but it's a book about people not understanding him and, you know, treating him badly. So, but apparently it's an excellent book. It has been recommended to me by about 1 billion people, and actually it was on Jen Campbell's list of books that will make you a better human, so I'm going to agree with Jen on this one. The next book I'm going to mention is Joel Parker Rhodes' The Ninth Ward, just Ninth Ward, which follows a girl living in the Ninth Ward in New Orleans when Hurricane Katrina hits. And she ends up having to deal with a lot of things on her own, and it is an excellent look at this tragedy, at this event in American history that a lot of people just did not understand what the problem was. Why didn't they evacuate? Well, they couldn't evacuate. They didn't have anywhere to go. They didn't have a way to do it. And I think that this is an excellent book to describe that. And it's another one that's tied very much to the poverty section. So, like I said, these are not in any order. But this is another book that I think explains that extremely well. Next one is Sherman Alexie's The Absolutely True Diary of a Part-Time Indian. And I think that this is an excellent read for anyone, period. But it is a really good look at life on a reservation. It is a really good, accessible look at what it's like to come from a super impoverished background or just a general impoverished background and have to deal with privilege on a daily basis. In this case, it happens to be racial and class privilege, but yeah, so good. Anything by Sherman Alexie is good, but next book I'm going to mention, Persepolis, and this copy is the complete Persepolis, so it's Persepolis 1 and 2. You can get the copies where it's just the first or second one, but this is Marjane Satrapi's life growing up in the Islamic Revolution in Iran, and there's a lot of things in here that I think particularly Americans need to understand and need to read and need to see in order to understand anything about the current state of the Middle East. This certainly isn't a comprehensive look at the Middle East, and it's certainly not going to tell you every single thing you need to know, but I think it's a really good starting place, and I think it makes a lot of good points. And the last one I'm going to mention may seem a little out of place, and that is Our Lady of the Lost and Found, a novel of Mary, Faith, and Friendship by Diane Chamberlain. And the reason that I put this one in here is, I think I've mentioned this in at least one other video. I've had a copy of this continually for like 15 years. I've read it a bunch of different times, and I like it more every time I read it. And what it is this woman keeps seeing signs, and she doesn't realize they're signs. And one day, the Virgin Mary shows up at her front door, looks like a normal person, wanting to stay at her house for a short vacation because she's extremely tired and she needs a rest. And while I'm not a religious person, I'm not Christian, and I've never been Catholic, I think that this is a really good novel in that you start to think about these religious figures like Mary or whoever and what their lives must be like. So if they were real, you know, would this be how they lived? Would this be the sort of things that they did? And she also, the author also ties in a bunch of stories of sightings of the Virgin Mary over the years. So the children who have seen her and things like that, and how that affects their lives. So I think this is a really good way to access the reasons that a lot of people turn to religion. And I think it also, in some really backdoor ways, will make you stop and think about, you know, how do other people live? What is it that is different about their life that's not in mine? And it's just a really thought-provoking book. It doesn't seem like it would be. It seems like it'd just be something that's kind of fluffy, but it's not. It's actually got a lot of deep stuff in it, and I always recommend it to anyone who likes, well, it's several years old, but it's essentially contemporary. There's no romance in it or anything like that. It's just essentially a novel about two women. It's just that one of them happens to be the Virgin Mary. So, yeah. And so those are the books that I have. And I did want to mention a few others. So the first one I'm going to mention is Speak by Laurie Halse Anderson. And that is another young adult book. And it's about rape. And it's about date rape, and the girl who was raped doesn't really name the fact that she was raped. Not that she doesn't understand it, but she doesn't really name it, and it causes a lot of problems. And I think it's just a wonderful, wonderful book. A good way of accessing the emotions and the explanations of what it's like to be in that situation. Another one I do not have a copy of is The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks, which is a nonfiction book. I don't think it's that old. It's several years old now. But it's about this woman, Henrietta Lacks, whose cells, she had this insanely aggressive cancer, and they took her cells and ended up using them to multiply in the lab to use for research and things like that. And her family never knew it. And so it took multiple years and research to discover that they were making all this money off of, you know, drugs and different research that all came from her. And it's a really good look at the medical profession and the medical research and a lot of other things going on that have to do with poverty and race and class. And it's just a really good book. The next one I want to mention is Middlesex by Jeffrey Eugenides. And it's about a girl who was born intersex, and she has to, as a teenager, come to grips with the fact that she doesn't really feel like a girl. She feels more like a boy, and she doesn't understand what's going on because it's really not something she knows how to handle. Because, I mean, most people wouldn't know how to handle that. And it's just a really good novel, and in general, but also for that. And there's another one, Leaving Microsoft to Save the World. And I don't have a copy of this, and I cannot remember who wrote it, but again, I'll leave it below. And he works for Microsoft. He goes on this, you know, trip to, I think it's Tibet. And while he's there on his rich tourist trip, he finds out that these schools have no books. They have a few that were left by hikers and people who were climbing the mountains, and it's things like, you know, adult novels and things like that. And they can't even really access them because they're locked up, because the school has to keep them locked up because they're afraid they're going to get destroyed because it's the only books they have. So essentially he comes home and starts this huge charity that sends massive amounts of books and builds libraries and schools, and now has a separate section that sends girls to school in underdeveloped nations. So it's just a really good thing. And I've heard some criticisms of it, but honestly, I think it's just a really good book about seeing something in the world that you can fix. You have the power to fix, because he had a lot of money, so he had the power to fix this, and doing it. I mean, I don't have the money to go out and start a massive charity to help children on the other side of the world, but you know, some days I may have an extra dollar or two to do something, and that's the important part, is seeing something you can do and doing it and not being a jerk. And the next couple I have are specifically on here because of my own issues, and that is Devil in the Details and Amen, 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 both of which are about OCD, two different kinds. Well, not two different kinds, but two different people's memoirs about them, and I thought those were really, really good coverage of OCD and really honest portrayals of it and what it does to your life. So I suggest those to a lot of people who ask me about having OCD, and while their OCD is not exactly the same as mine, I've had a lot of the same symptoms they have, and it's nice to be able to point someone to a book to look at someone else's experiences without having to bare your soul every time somebody asks you a question. Another one about OCD is Just Checking, and I think that was all of my books. But I'm also going to link a couple of poems, spoken word poems down below. One of which is Suhair Hamad, First Writing Since, and this is about being a Palestinian woman in a post 9/11, or in America, in the United States, as 9/11 happens and just after. And then I'm also going to put in a couple of others whose titles are escaping me right now, but they're specifically about the LGBT experience, and I think they're really powerful and beautiful things. And I'm also going to link one more, which is Jason Carney, and I can't remember the name of the poem, but it's all about his Southern heritage and overcoming certain things that are inherent, unfortunately inherent in being part of the South, which speaks a lot to me because I know a lot of problematic things go on in Alabama, which is where I'm from, and I love my home state. It's a beautiful place, but there's a lot of things to overcome coming out of there, and I think Jason Carney articulates it particularly well in his poem. So I'm going to leave, there's going to be like a billion links below, but please go check them all out. Go check Jen Campbell out. She's amazing. I love her. She has 4 books out. I'm sorry, she has 4 books out, 3 about bookshops and 1 poetry collection, and you should go check them all out right now. Go to your library, go buy them, do something, but definitely go check her channel out. Check out the poems I'm listing below. They are beautiful, beautiful things. And thank you for listening to me ramble on for about 22 minutes about books and being a better human. And always remember, don't be a dick. Thanks, guys. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.